Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhusya Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are now doing the 8th chapter of Panchadashi. It's called Kutastha Deepa Chaitanyam or Kutastha Deepa Prakaranam, and this deals with essentially of the Kutastha Chaitanyam and how does it differ from the Chidabhasa and how knowledge takes place, and therefore it analyzes the how perception and how any knowledge takes place in the mind also. And we are doing we just finished 4. We'll read it again. Ghataikaakaradhistachit Ghataikaakaradhistachit Ghatameva vabhasayet Ghatameva vabhasayet Ghatasya jnatato brahma Ghatasya jnatato brahma Chaitanyena vabhasate Chaitanyena vabhasate. Together. Ghataikaakaradhistachit Ghatameva vabhasayet Ghatasya jnatata brahma Chaitanyena vabhasate. So here we are looking at how knowledge occurs, and this is where the Vedanta becomes the actual pramana, because science cannot explain this. They know, in fact, they cannot define what knowledge is. They can only define knowledge of X, Y, Z. So what is pure knowledge is undefinable. That in fact Vedanta says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That knowledge, pure knowledge, is nature of the Brahman itself, which is pure consciousness. So here when we say I am knowledge, I know this means I am conscious of this. So how does the knowledge takes place? So here we are going from the Vedantic way of understanding, say how essentially perception occurs. And according to Vedanta, we mentioned that the mind along with the sense organs, or along with the senses, that means Sparsa, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, the sense of touch, sense of seeing, sense of hearing, all those 5 senses. So the mind travels along with the senses and grasps the object. So when I say I am seeing the object, how am I seeing? Says according to Vedanta, the mind goes out and grasps the object and senses in the process and collects the attributes of the object. So when it says when the mind goes out and for the grasp the object, that is essentially what it implies is it forms a vritti of the object. It forms a thought in the mind that arises in the mind, and that is what essentially means a grasping the object. That means the formation of vritti. It's called vritti vyapti. In short, vritti vyapti involves mind along with the senses grasping the object there. This is what the pratyaksha pramana, direct perceptual knowledge. We are not going to talk about the anumana pramana, that requires a different understanding. But in the anumana means logical deduction. Logical deduction also depends upon pratyaksha pramana, because I am seeing something, but I am deducing what I am not seeing based on what I am seeing. That's what is the deductive, logic, deductive induction or deductive conclusion based on the data. So data is by pratyaksha pramanam. So in the pratyaksha pramanam, according to Vedanta, I am grasping the object, and the senses perceive grasp the attributes of the object, because senses can only see the qualities of the object. So the eyes can collect the color of the object and also the shape of the object, form. Shape can also be done by sparsha, by touching, like that blind people. But if you don't have proper complete, otherwise like 6 blind people defining elephant, that will happen unless each one completely takes care into a 3-dimensional object. If he touches only, then he will know through sense of touch. But for eyes can see a stereographic projection, because we have 2 eyes. Lord has given 2 eyes, a space between them almost like the 7 degrees are there, giving you a stereographic projection of which you have a 3-dimensional vision of the object. That's what they do in the with the polarized light, where I can see with one eye only that part of the eye which is taken from one angle, and with the other eye with the other polarized light which is taken from the other polarization. So they are 90 degrees apart, and I am given the glasses to see it in order to see 3-dimensional vision of that movie also. That's possible only because this left eye can only see the polarized light or the movie that's made with that polarized light, and the right eye can only see that part of it that is taken from the other polarized light, and therefore I am given a glasses which can differentiate the 2 lights, and integration of that occurs in the mind. Now, how does it integrate? That is essentially the further analysis required. But right now, I'm going to say is from the Vedantic point, I am grasping the object, and the senses are gathered. So senses means attributes of the object, or information about the attributes of the object are received in the form of a vritti. So vritti contains contents of the vritti. That form consists of the shape, the attributes of the object. So essentially, this is Ghataika Akara. Akaram is involved with shape. So Akaram includes the color of also, because I cannot get color from the touching and all that. So if I am color blind, then my senses are defective, so therefore I don't see what it is. Then I will see only a distorted vision because of the defective nature of my senses. There's nothing to do with the object. Now, what exactly the object information that is? It's only the attributes belong to the object. You cannot remove the attribute from the object, because they are the swabhavikam. It's their nature of the attributes. They are intrinsic nature. It's not a samyoga sambandha. It's not a contact relationship, but it is a relationship that belongs to the object, and I cannot remove the attributes from the object. So what exactly senses can gather? Senses can gather only reflected attributes of the object, because the objects there remain with the object, the attributes remain with the object, only reflected attributes, and that is the content of the vritti. Vritti is a thought. So thought rises in the mind when the mind grasps the object, and the thought content is nothing but the attributes of the object. And the attributes cannot exist without a locus. Now the locus of the attributes in the case of a pot is a pot, but in the case of the thought is a pot thought. So it's not the pot. Pot doesn't come into my mind. Pot still remains there. Only pot thought arises in the mind. So here we are talking about the Ghataika Akara Dhi. Dhi means thought, a vritti, and that involves the Ghataika Akaraha, the shape of the pot. Shape includes shape, colors and all that. We are talking about the sense of sight. Because we are not tasting the ghatam or hearing the ghatam, because the ghatavadyam, that's a different. But we are only seeing the ghatam and say ghatam is. I see ghatam, therefore I have a knowledge of the ghatam. So here the example is Ghataika Akara Dhista Chit Ghato Me Vavabhasate. So whenever the thought rises in the mind, then light of consciousness, which is everywhere, falls on the thought and gets reflected by the thought. So it is the consciousness is basking in the thought, and the thought being a subtle has a capacity to reflect, and the reflection depends upon the thought content. So just as any reflection depends upon the medium of reflection, a medium of the reflection here is a thought with its attributive content of the ghatakara. So it is ghatakara vritti, a thought with the contents of the shape of the ghatam. That's what is the information, content of the vritti, and that has to be illumined, or it gets illumined by the consciousness that is everywhere, and that reflected consciousness is what is called chidabhasa. So chidabhasa of the vritti, and therefore we say that the chid ghatam evava bhasate. So ghatam evava bhasate. So the pot is illumined by chidabhasa. Ghatasya jnatata brahma chaitanyava bhasate. So this is when the reflection of the thought is knowledge here. Why? Because just as reflection of my hand, that is called the image of the hand, is reaching your retina and say, yes, I am seeing the hand. So it is a knowledge of the presence of the hand because you are seeing the reflected image from the hand. Same way, reflected image of the thought is the chidabhasa, from which I am gaining the knowledge of chidabhasa, knowledge of the ghatam. Now, then spontaneously, this is a pot. Spontaneously, there is an ownership that arises in the mind, and that spontaneously rises without associated vritti, without associated another thought, and that is being illumined because there is a background constant illumination by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So Kutastha Chaitanyam is constantly illuminating the mind without a thoughts. So look at this way. So the Kutastha Chaitanyam is just, it doesn't have to illumine anything. It is nature is illumination. But when there is a mind, it gets illumined. But when the mind has a particular thought, then it illumines the particular thought also. So therefore we have in the background a mind which is being illumined constantly as long as the mind is there by the pure consciousness. And that's called Kutastha Brahma Chaitanyam. And when particular thought rises, that is being reflected by the chidabhasa, by the reflection, and spontaneously that thought, that is vritti jnanam, that's called pot knowledge. Pot knowledge is nothing but thought knowledge is pot knowledge. Why? Because the contents of the thought is nothing but contents, the attributes of the pot. So what I am seeing an object in this shape, in this form. So if it is a gold one, then I have, in addition to the attributes of the form, I am getting the color of the gold also. Where if it is a silver, all silver attribute along with the pot shape also I am getting. Pot is a shape, and the color is of the metal color or a background color depends upon the material, and both are coming to the mind, and that's only attributive content of that. So every knowledge, number one, every knowledge is attributive knowledge, because padartham is outside, object is outside, thought is in the mind. Padartham doesn't come to the mind. So through the thoughts I am able to see the world. If there is no mind, there cannot be thoughts and there cannot be the world. So out of mind, out of sight. So all these things are required in order for me to know that there is a world. So world is nothing but all objects together, or a series of objects put together as though is the world. So when I say I am transacting in the world, I am transacting with the objects in the world, and therefore I am transacting using the thought process, because every object converts into a thought process as though in the mind. All that is implied, and none of this can be analyzed by objective sciences, because objective tools are not amenable to analysis for this analysis, because this is a subtle, and gross objects, gross tools cannot analyze. Therefore, using gross tools, I want to say that there is nothing like this. That only means my stupidity only, because I am not using proper investigation in order to inquire the nature of the object or nature of the mind. And here it says there are two aspects involved. One is the vritti jnanam, that is, vritti jnanam is the knowledge of the thought. Knowledge of the thought arises by the reflected consciousness called Siddhabhasa, because light has to get reflected, and the reflection of the thought is the knowledge of the thought, because this is a consciousness that is getting reflected. So I am conscious of the contents of the thought. Therefore, I am conscious of, in fact, I am conscious of the existence of the thought and also existent contents of the thought, which are nothing but attributes of the object out there as gathered by senses. If the senses didn't gather properly, then I get misinformation of the thought, in the thought. All that is implied means errors in perception can occur if the senses do not gather the false information or incorrect information or incomplete information. Then the total story is not really the complete, because I am not seeing the object as it is, but as perceived by the senses. That's why if I have if I am wearing a blue glasses, I can only see everything is blue. Not because the objects are blue, but what I am seeing, the vritti that is formed is coated with blue color because of the glasses that are coming in between, and therefore the objects also look blue to me. So this is a superimposed attributes on top of what is gathered by the senses. So we have one thing, object should be there. Now senses should gather information, and the senses have to be formed vritti, and vritti is illumined by the Chiddabhasa. So that's called the knowledge of the part. So by this process, when the reflection of the Chiddabhasa or consciousness through the Chiddabhasa occurs, now I have the knowledge of the part. So the gadasya jnatata means the knowingness or knowingness of the part occurs because of the ghatam. This is a part. But also there is an ownership thought arises as though it's not a thought, but ownership spontaneously arises in the background of the mind, that I know this is a part. One is this is a part, that is the object which is illumined by Chiddabhasa. But ownership says I am a knower. So I am a knower of this part. So this is a part, I am a knower. So this is called the Triputi. Triputi means knower, known, and the knowing means through a pramana. Pramana means pratyaksha pramana. So therefore this Triputi or the knowership arises by how? By how? Because if another thought arises in the mind which has to be illumined by the Chiddabhasa, the knower thought, if it arises, then we'll ask, how does the knower thought is again known? Then we have to have another thought again, that which knows the knower thought, which knows the part. So it becomes what you call anavastu dosha. I can keep on going about knowing of the knowing of the knowing of the knowing. That is not what happens. What happens is spontaneously I know that this is a part. So I know this part, I know this thought, I know that thought, I know that thought. A series of thoughts keep coming. That's what he analyzed in terms of the wall and the bimbas, the spotlights on the wall. Wall is nothing but the mind, and these spotlights are nothing but the thought. But in the case of mind, the thoughts occurs in sequence, as we are going to discuss later. So here we need to be careful. In what way, how do the knowledge of that I am a knower. I am a knower of this is a part. I know this is a part. I know Ashoka. I know chemistry. So chemistry is a vritti thought, but I know is also spontaneously rises whenever the thought rises and the knowledge occurs. So the ownership is what is called being illumined, not by Chidabhasa, because it's not a vritti. So it is what is illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So we separate here the Kutastha Chaitanyam, the Brahma Chaitanyam, or illumination by the Brahma Chaitanyam from the Chidabhasa Chaitanyam for the analysis. We'll go later. Is there a Kutastha Chaitanyam illumination also? That's also we'll have to understand later. But right now we are talking about two aspects of it. One is the illumination of the thought, another is illumination of the knower, and that occurs spontaneously. And this is what is being discussed now very little bit elaborately. One has to be careful how the analysis is. So if you look at the four mantra, that before verse, Ghataikakara Dhista, that's what we chanted. Ghataikakara Dhista Chit Ghata me Vava Bhasaye. Ghatasya Jnatato Brahma Chaitanya Nava Bhasate. So here differentiating the Ghata Akara Dhihi, the vritti of the Ghata Akara, that means the form of the shape of the part, that formed vritti, and that is being known by the Chidabhasa, by Eva Abhasaye, that is from the reflected consciousness, and which we call it Chidabhasa. And Ghatasya Jnatata, the knowingness of the Ghatam, that means I know this is a part, that spontaneously arises because it is there all the time in the background. Brahman is there all the time and mind is there. So whenever the thought arises, the contents of the thought, this is a pot, this is a chair, this is a... So whenever the object knowledge occurs, there is spontaneously, along with the thought knowledge, I say, I know this is a pot, I know this is a chair, I know this is a sofa, I know all that, I know. The ownership of the knowledge, that's called the jnatata, the knowingness. Knowingness is not another vritti. If it's another vritti, then Chidabhasa will come. It's not another vritti. Why it's not another vritti? If it's another vritti, then I need another vritti to know. So it keeps on going. So therefore, it's not another vritti. It is just the background mind itself, and that is what being illumined by Brahma Chaitanyam. So here we have to, when there are no thoughts, what is being illumined by the mind without the thoughts is nothing but Brahma Chaitanyam. This is very interesting. This is, suppose if I don't have any thoughts, what is being illumined is by Brahma Chaitanyam. What is illumined? It is the mind. Again the mind. Mind without having a thoughts is what is being known by through Brahma Chaitanyam. We'll come back here. In that mind, is there a knowledge or is there ignorance? And this makes a difference whether it's a deep sleep state or a jnani also. So, Akhandakara Ajnana Vritti, Akhandakara Jnana Vritti, both are there. And why we call it a Vritti, if it is Akhandam, all that's to be analyzed properly. And how the terminology is, because terminology can be confusing and it becomes a mind-boggling if we don't understand. That's why people say, why do we need a teacher? Need a teacher in order to have a crystal clear understanding of this. I got somebody called a GPS. GPS is required. So I have a map, I can read the map, I can go to library, I get the information, I know what is where, everything, and all that is there. So why do I need a teacher? That's what people ask. Says you need, just as you may know where the things are, you have the map, you have everything, and depending upon where you are and how you got lost, it says you have to find a local GPS in order to redirect you to back into the path. And if you take a detour by mistake, you have to come back. All that can be done by GPS. GPS keeps on evaluating, readjusting, and all that. If those who are using GPS system is the keep correcting you, and that is what essentially a teacher is. Teacher is the one who helps you to redirect your path when you are getting lost. You need a guidance in order to get back onto the mainstream. Even though you know from the library you can read, you can do on the online anywhere, but you need a personal guidance because your problems are not necessarily same as other people's problems, and therefore the personal help not a who can help, not a teacher who is not there physically cannot do. So you need a physical teacher. A guru is required in order to guide. When we need a guru even for a PhD, the university doesn't allow you to do your own research by your own way, because I have books and all that and I investigate whatever I want. You need a guidance even to get a PhD. But here is more subtler than that. So you need a teacher, because people ask, we don't need a teacher, we don't need a scripture, and all you have to do is sit down and meditate and so on. Or we say, well, somebody else is a teacher and who is not available in the living form. Say, I may have an admiration for him, but when I am getting lost, I need a guidance also. So that's why when I ask whether you need a really teacher nowadays, because everything is available on Googling it. Googling has become a verb. So by Googling it, you can find all the information that you want. But it's so much information that you can thoroughly get confused also, unless you have proper guidance. So by Googling information, you cannot do research. You have to find a proper guide also. So now we will go to this will be analyzed more as we go along. So we'll take up mantra 5 or verse 5. Ajñātatvena bhātoyam gato bodhyudayat pura gato bodhyudayat pura brahmanaivoparishtattu jñātatvena saubhidha jñātatve nitya saubhidha. Together. Ajñātatvena bhātoyam ghato bhujudayat pura brahmanaivoparishtattu jñātatve nitya saubhidha. So ajñātatatvena bhātoyam ghataha bhujudayat ayam ghataha bhujudayat pura. So this is a pot. When I say a pot, this is a pot. This is a chair. This is a sofa. How do you know? Because I can see. What I am seeing? Whenever I see a vritti formed in the mind, and it is being illumined by the reflected consciousness, Siddhabhasa, and therefore I know this is a pot, this is a chair, this is so on. All this arising when I see an object. So ajñātatvena bhātoyam ghato bhujjuda. And we said, when the knowledge, this is the pot, vritti jnanam arises, spontaneously there arises that I am a knower of this pot, or I am a knower of this is a pot, this pot, or this is a pot, or because I may not know other pots. So I am a knower of this pot, I am knower of this chair, I am knower of this person, I am knower. So I am talking about the particular one that I am seeing right now and knowing it, and that is not a memory, is a direct perceptual knowledge when the thought is arising. So here we are talking about that is by a reflected consciousness. And we said simultaneously, whenever the reflected consciousness is conscious of the object, simultaneously the knower thought, knower as though thought, it's not a thought, knower also arises, knowingness also arises, and that's being illumined not through vritti, because vritti means then the Chiddabhasa is required, not by vritti, by the background, which is pure consciousness. And pure consciousness is there all the time. So whether the pot thought is there, before pot thought, what was there before? Pot thought, before that is a mind without pot thought. What was there before? Ajñātatvena vātoyam ghato bujjadayat. So before I see a pot, what was there before? Before I have a mind, maybe with other thought, but no pot thought, because I'm not seeing a pot. So what was there about specifically? It is ajnana, it means lack of knowledge of the pot. Ajnana here is the ignorance of the pot. So ajñātatvena vātoyam ghato bujjadayat. So knowledge of the absence of the pot. So here we have to be careful here. Before the pot thought arises, what was there is no pot thought, and what was there is the background buddhi. Let's not worry about other thoughts of other objects right now. Let's say no other thoughts other than a single pot thought. And when I say pot thought, there is a pot thought. If I don't say a pot, if there is no pot there, what I am seeing is the absence of the pot, absence of any specific knowledge. So what is there is only pure mind, and pure mind is being illumined by pure consciousness, Kutastha Chaitanyam. We don't call it at that time Chidabhasa, we call it as a Kutastha Chaitanyam, illumined by the background, the being illuminated by all consciousness. So Ajñātatvena bhātoyam gato bujjudayat pura. Pura, before the knowledge of the pot arose, there was ignorance of the pot, of that particular thought. Because there is no ignorance, means not ignorance of specific, ignorance of many things also. So ignorance of so many things, but ignorance of the pot also, because the pot knowledge is arising now. So before that arising, there was no pot thought. So that absence of the pot thought is also being illumined by, but not by Chidabhasa, but by the Brahma Chaitanyam. That's what he is going to say here. Brahmai noparishthatu. So Brahmana eva aparishthatu. Brahmana eva uparishthatu. So after the pot thought formed and in association with the Chidabhasa, Jnatatve setya saubhida. So the asau, the pot, Jnatatvena, known as present, iti bhida. This is the difference between the Brahma Chaitanyam and the pot Chaitanyam or Chidabhasa Chaitanyam. So here we are differentiating two things. One is presence of the pot and absence of the pot. The presence of the pot is being illumined through Chidabhasa. The absence of the thought is being illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanya. Now here one has to be careful here. There is also absence of the thought as a thought also. So we are now differentiating that he has not discussed here, but one has to be careful. So when I ask you, can you go and see in the other room, is there a pot there? So now you are looking all the objects and come back to me and say there is no pot there. And this is a pramana. These are the means of knowledge. So there is a pramana, prameya and pramata. So I am a knower of the presence, absence of the pot there. So this is different. This is a vritti jnanam only because I am seeing everything and a thought raises in my mind as though there is no pot thought. Non-pot thought is arising because I know what pot means, I know attributes of the pot. So it is the absence of the presence of the pot. So that is different, called anupalabdhi pramanam. So there is a pramanam, means there is a objective knowledge. That's an objective knowledge only, and that is not a akhandam. It is a particular knowledge of the absence of particular object, and that you come back and say there is no pot there. What about Gagaboo? Is Gagaboo there? So you go there, you will go in there and say, what is Gagaboo? So I don't know either Gagaboo, but go and find out if there's a Baba Boo is there. Says, how can you find out? So Gagaboo is not there or is present. Even if you go there and see, you will not know whether Gagaboo, because you don't know what Gagaboo is there. Because you know what a pot, and in fact, if I can ask you, is there a red pot there? And if you go there and see, you see all other pots except red pot. That means you have a knowledge of the existence of how red pot should look like beforehand. based on the color and report it on to me based on the particular contents of the vritti. So this is called vritti abhasa jnanam, called the Anupalabdhi Pramana. I think it's called Anupalabdhi Pramana. Arthapatti Anupalabdhi Pramanam. So this Anupalabdhi Pramanam is because it's a negation of the presence of any object. But here we are not talking about that negation. It is before the knowledge of the pot arose. So what was there is complete absence of any particular no particular ignorance, and that is called the undifferentiated ignorance of the mind, and that is what is being illumined by the because there is no vritti, particular vritti of the ignorance is not there. There is no vritti, because vritti is there, then Chidabhasa comes into picture. So there is no vritti jnanam, but it is the absence of the vritti jnanam itself is recorded as the ignorance of the pot, but ignorance of the pot, also ignorance of any other things also, including ignorance of Chidabhasa also. You cannot say Chidabhasa, I am ignorant of Chidabhasa. Say, I don't know what is Chidabhasa because you are mentioning it, because there is no memory of that. So when you go and see, there is no pot there, but you have a memory information of what pot should look like, and that object with those attributes content that you are remembering is not there. So the attribute content from the memory is what is essentially a vritti jnanam there, and the vritti jnanam is reflected consciousness around. So one has to be careful what background here. Pura means here he is not differentiating, but we know Anupalabdhi Pramana, so we have to be careful what he is talking about, the ignorance of the pot. So Ajñātatvena bhātoyam gato buddhudayat pura, before the knowledge of the pot took place, because I am seeing the pot right there, before the knowledge of the pot takes place, what was there? Because ignorance of the knowledge of the pot. So that ignorance, how did it know? Then it is illumined by the Kutastha Chaitanyam. That's what he is saying here. Brahmanaivo uparishtatu. So uparishta, Brahma uparishtatu, that part thought is formed after the association, but before that is nothing but pure, illumined by the pure consciousness, which is called Kutastha Chaitanyam. So before the knowledge took place, the existence of the pot is unknown. Here it says, so it is expressed as, I do not know if there is a pot or not. But if it is expressed as, I do not know if it is a pot or not, then again it's a thought. I don't know if there is a pot or not here. That means I am inquiring an object that is called Anupalabdhi Pramana. But it is not expressed here, but that's not true here. But this is only commentary by some Swami. So from the point of the truth is that I have no knowledge of anything, nor I am inquiring into the nature of the pot. I am just seeing that there is no pot or no pot knowledge before, and now knowledge arose because I am seeing it. When I am going into a new place, I am not going to say this is not there, that is not there, that is not there, chair is not there, talk is there. We are not going to say all that. Before say I am going there with, and if the room is empty, it says there is no objects there other than the walls, of course. When they say there is no object there, I am not going to talk about there is no particular object there of this, etc. Suppose now there is a pot, somebody brought it, now I have a pot knowledge. So before pot knowledge arose, I have a knowledge of the absence of the pot. That knowledge is being illuminated by the Brahma Chaitanyam. So how did the pot come into picture? That we don't want, because there is Satkarya Vada, Anirvachanaya Vada, etc., etc. So the existence of the pot is completed, and knowledge of the pot is completed only when the vritti comes into picture. Before the vritti comes into picture, there is no vritti, therefore there is no Chidabhasa, and the background is being illumined by the pure consciousness, which is essentially the Kutastha Chaitanyam. So we have the one has to be careful here as you're going to analyze. We have Kutastha Chaitanyam all the time. And whenever there is a mind, if I say that I have a mind, how do I know? So mind with the thoughts or without the thoughts. So this has to be careful here. So any particular thought has to have an object oriented. They're called vritti jnanam. So every thought that arises in the mind has have an associated with some object locus. So what is a thought? What is the thought is nothing but a perturbation in the mind, and the Vedanta calls it a vritti. Vritti means a change of state of the mind. So mind, a perturbation in the mind, and the change of state is only a one at a time. So one thought at a time in sequence only mind can take. So mind has though changed into a thought form. So somebody said the mind is nothing but the flow of thoughts. The flow of thoughts arises in the mind. So there can be, is there a mind without a thought? And here we are talking about that mind where there is no thoughts, and that being illumined by, how do you know? By the Kutastha Chaitanyam, by that. So thoughtless mind is being illumined by Kutastha Chaitanyam, Brahma Chaitanyam. This is going to be talked about. What is this deep sleep state? What is a moksha and all that is going to be analyzed, because that is a state where there are no vritti, particular vrittis. So it is a thoughtless mind, including samadhi also. But we are talking about different samadhi later. But this is essentially a mind without any thoughts being illumined by pure consciousness. So before the part thought arises, there is no part thought, there is no vritti, therefore it is by the pure consciousness. When the part thought arises, you have this is a part thought, and simultaneously the knower also arises in the background, spontaneously being illumined by the Brahma Chaitanyam. So I know this is a part. This is a part. I know this is a part. The knowerness, the knowerness is a jnatritvam, or the knowingness, or arises spontaneously without having another thought. Because if I have another thought, we said it leads to infinite regress. So with that, because it's a little bit complicated, we go by slowly, has to be understood. What is a nirvikalpa samadhi? What is a mindless? Is there a mind? Is there something beyond the mind? All those things have to be crystal clear for understanding the Vedanta. With this we stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Sishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.